Welcome back to Soul Shift, the podcast where real life, science, and soul all get a seat at the table. I'm Allie Anderson, and today I'm here with my co-host, Christine Morgenstern-Shin, and we're doing something a little bit different today.
That's right. Today we're turning the tables. So instead of being behind the mic and asking questions, we're interviewing our beloved host, Mindy Gorman-Plutzer.
And I have to ask our listeners before we begin, big question. How many times this week have you looked in the mirror and immediately started cataloging what's wrong? What are the wrinkles, the weight, the way your body has changed without giving you permission? And how many times have you had that exact same conversation with your reflection for more than a decade?
And if you're resonating what Allie just shared, Mindy sees you because she was you. In over 20 years, she waged a daily war on her body. And the mirror, when she looked in, was her battlefield. And the scale was her judge. And she was both the prisoner and the warden of the cell she built for herself. And it's a lot to have to do that on a daily basis. So we all have empathy for this journey Mindy's been on.
Absolutely. But her story is pretty extraordinary. At 49, she was newly widowed and drowning in grief, and she hit rock bottom. But at age 55, yes, I said age 55, she made a decision that would change everything. She walked away from her career at a weight loss center, rejecting the very system that held her captive for decades. And she went back to school for 8 years to learn the truth about food, body, and freedom.
And so today, Mindy's a certified functional nutrition and lifestyle practitioner, a board-certified integrative health coach, and a certified eating psychology coach. Her 30 years of experience are chronicled in 2 transformational books, including her latest Midlife Metamorphosis, The Journey from Diet Culture to Radical Acceptance.
I cannot wait to start chatting about the book. It's so good, and Mindy's wisdom is brilliant. Her voice has reached women worldwide through Dr. Radio, Huffington Post Live, ABC News, and of course, this podcast, where she co-hosts with us every week. Mindy is living proof that you're not too late, you're not too old, and you're not too far gone to write a completely different ending to your story.
Welcome to Soul Shift, where modern science, ancient wisdom, and real life align.
Soul Shift offers a peaceful pause in your week, a gentle reminder that meaningful change doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Together, we'll discover practical tools, we'll share authentic conversations, and honor the beautiful complexity of being human.
This is your invitation to breathe, to reflect, and to trust the process.
Thank you for being here. Let's shift
Gently.
Together.
Mindy, it's an absolute honor to hold space for your story today. And welcome to your own show.
First of all, the honor is mine to show up with you and for you every week. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share my story and my true life transformation with you and our audience.
Oh, lovely. Mindy, I can't wait to really dive in and for our listeners to get to know you even better. So let's start at the beginning, right? For over 20 years, you believe that your worth was tied to the size of your body. I think a lot of us can resonate with that. So take us back to where you think that belief first started forming for you.
When I look back honestly, really honestly, it started very early. I grew up in a household, and I have to say it was a loving household. It was a bit complicated, but nonetheless, the people who were responsible for my well-being and care were always on a diet, always commenting on their bodies or someone else's. The message wasn't spoken out loud, though. It was just kind of permeating in the air that your body was something to be managed, controlled, improved. That thinner meant better, and better meant worthy. At least that was how I interpreted. And by the time I was a teenager, I had really deeply, deeply absorbed that belief as fact. Didn't question it. I just internalized it and started acting on it, restricting, comparing, measuring my value by the size of my pants. And what's heartbreaking is that I genuinely believed the most important project I had was making myself smaller. It's insidious, and that's what's so insidious about diet culture. It doesn't announce itself. It just becomes the water you swim in until one day you're exhausted and certainly not at peace. And you finally have to ask, who told me that this was true?
You know, Mindy, what you're sharing, I believe I've just heard the story over and over again, but in unique ways, right? Because this is such a personal, unique story to you. And in just looking at the mirror and just fixating on the size is just heartbreaking, I'm sure, for you now. But hindsight's 2020, right? And you had to live through that experience to get to where you are. I know you spent years working inside a well-known diet program. And like you said, you believed that the number was important. You believed in the systems, and you generally thought you were helping people lose weight in, the best way, right? But then as far as I understand, something shifted. What happened that made you start questioning the very rules you were once teaching?
Chris, this is the question that I find myself actually grateful for because it takes me back to a real turning point. So I was working in this very well-known diet center in local community. And I so believed in the system. I was good at it. I was helping women lose weight. The people there trusted me. I felt like I was making a difference. But I kept watching what happened after the weight came off. Something was supposed to shift for these women emotionally, relationally, spiritually. The scale changed. But the war inside didn't. Behavior with food changed, but the relationship with it did not. If anything, their success on the scale fostered an even deeper fear of what food would do to them. They could no longer trust food because here I was teaching them to restrict, teaching them to eliminate, teaching them to depend on, I'm laughing because this is what's so insidious, to depend on discipline and willpower when it was all about their relationship with themselves. So I had to look in the mirror and I had to be honest with myself because I had to look at my own relationship with myself, which was playing out in my relationship with food and my relationship and belief in my body. So I was in my early 50s, still weighing myself every morning, still negotiating with my body, still believing that if I could just maintain a certain number, I would finally be okay. And I realized I've been doing this for over 20 years. I'm not free. And I'm still a prisoner. And I'm still standing on that scale every single morning, letting a number determine my worth and how I was going to believe I was putting myself out into the world that day. So I started asking the questions that the system didn't have answers for, right? Why do we keep coming back? Why does achieving this goal not bring us what we were promised? Why are we still anxious, still controlling, basically still at war? And the deeper that I went into functional nutrition, into eating psychology, into the research on chronic dieting and metabolism and the mind-body-gut connection, the clearer it became. We'd been treating a symptom and calling it a cure. The body was never the problem. The relationship with the body was, and that relationship with the body was driven by our relationship with ourselves. So, at 55, I walked away. I left the career. I left the client roster. I left the income. And I went back to school. And I studied everything. And what I learned changed not just my work, but it changed my entire life.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, just a huge transformation. Literally, I'm listening and my heart is just like you're healing from the inside out. What I think makes your work so beautiful now, is how you touch people like that.
Absolutely. I imagine so many people listening are thinking they completely resonate with your story. So thank you for sharing that. And now, Mindy, you've guided hundreds of women now through your 4R framework, which is recognize, reject, reclaim, and I love radically accept. And so I want to ask you, when you start working with these women and you watch these limiting beliefs that you just described start to slowly fall apart, what starts happening for these women when all of this just starts to kind of crumble, all the beliefs that they've been carrying?
This is what I love most about this work. Something opens up.
Oh,
And it's often a little disorienting at first because these beliefs have been what you could consider load-bearing walls. They were a solution for these women. There was reward in the behavior. They've organized how they were moving through the world, right? How they made decisions, how they relate to themselves, how they relate to others, how it affected their intimacy and intimacy with themselves as well. So when this starts to crumble, there's grief, there's real deep grief, there's fear, because as I said, these behaviors became a solution. So the question can become, who will I be without these behaviors? But they realized that for the years spent at war with a body that was always doing its best to keep them alive, that is the greatest aha, right? They think about the meals that brought anxiety instead of joy. They think about the summer days spent hiking instead of swimming with their children and grandchildren. They think about the intimate moments that they lost, the intimate moments where they couldn't be fully present because they were worried about how their bodies looked. I feel that now just talking about it, right? There's grief for the decades of mental energy spent calculating, restricting, comparing, energy that could have gone towards dreams, towards relationships, towards creativity, and of course, towards purpose. And I've sat with women who've cried over lost decades. I've cried over lost decades. I've sat with women who realize they spent their entire 30s obsessing over 10 pounds that literally no one else even noticed. Women who skipped beach vacations, avoided photos, declined invitations, stayed silent in meetings, all because they didn't feel worthy in the bodies that they were in. And here's what's really important to understand. These behaviors were not character flaws. As I said before, they were solutions, they were survival strategies. When we don't feel safe in our bodies, when we've learned that our worth is conditional, when we're living in a nervous system state of constant threat, we develop coping mechanisms. Food becomes both the problem and the solution. The body becomes both the battlefield and the refuge. So the grief is sacred. It's real. It has to be honored.
I just keep hearing there's a war going on, with these women between what they want to do and what's in their head and what's, in their thoughts and how they feel about themselves, and then the grief. And you mentioned from a nervous system perspective, there's been decades of your body or your clients' bodies like being perceived as a threat, like something to control and manage and fight against. And can you talk about what it was like living in that constant state of war with yourself? And then what shifted in your nervous system when you finally began to make peace? Could you feel it inside? Did you feel like a different person as you slowly, shifted into a better, should we say, like peaceful state from a mental wellness standpoint?
It's a really important question, Chris, because for so many years, I didn't understand that what I was experiencing was a nervous system issue. I thought it was a willpower issue, a me issue, basically thinking that I was broken. But what I now understand, and what I hope to teach my clients, is that chronic dieting puts your nervous system in a constant state of threat. Your body doesn't know the difference between a famine and a diet. When you restrict food, your body goes literally into survival mode. It floods you with stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline. slows your metabolism to conserve energy. It amplifies hunger signals. And of course, the food thoughts, the food noise that everyone is referring to now, because it's literally trying to keep you alive. So for 20 plus years, I was living in that fight or flight, hypervigilant state, constantly scanning for threats, not realizing that it was a nervous system dysregulated state, right? So I would wake up every morning, and the first thing I'd do before I even said good morning to my husband, before I had a sip of water, was stepped on the scale. And depending on that number, as I said before, my entire day, my mood, my sense of self would be determined, right? If the number was good, I felt okay. I had permission to exist. It was not what I wanted to see. I deemed it as bad. I felt like a failure. So my whole body would contract. My nervous system would brace. And I restricted relentlessly. And when I inevitably overate in response to that deprivation, I would punish myself through excessive exercise, through laxative abuse, through more restriction. It was a cycle of control and compensation, punishment, and penance. And my body was never allowed to just be. It was always being managed, corrected, disciplined, right? So when you're living with the body as the enemy, you never feel safe. What shifted? It shifted when I finally began to make gradual shifts in my thinking and my behavior. And honestly, it happened without me even noticing at first. It was when I really started to relax into the process and realize that, hey, maybe there was something to trusting my body. So I started essentially working with my nervous system instead of against it. I learned about the digest state, right? The parasympathetic nervous system, and how our bodies can only properly digest food, absorb nutrients, and regulate hunger and fullness cues when we feel safe. And that was really interesting for me, because that shift in realizing that there was something physiological, something biological going on, helped free me of the shame that there was something wrong with me. It really helped me embrace what food could do for me, which took me away from the fear of what it would do to me.
You've come such a long way.
So let's talk about what that looks like and what I teach now in the Freedom Promise, right? So it's so much more than what we're eating. It's how we're eating. It's eating in a relaxed state. It's not standing counter or eating in the car. It's breathing before meals. It's slowing down enough to actually taste the food, right? I say the 3 T's: taste, temperature, and texture. Bringing curiosity instead of judgment. And for me, how the cloud lifted gradually is just one day I realized, it's Monday morning and I forgot to weigh myself. And then a few weeks later, I was at lunch with friends and I ordered a salad, not because I was being so careful, but because it sounded delicious. And it came and it was beautifully dressed and I was eating it. And halfway through, I realized, I forgot to ask for dressing on the side. And that had always been a non-negotiable. I'm sure many of our listeners can relate to that, And then another day I left the house without obsessing in front of the mirror about the size of my thighs, essentially. So basically, what I was doing was I was forgetting to suffer. I essentially forgot to suffer. And that forgetting was my nervous system finally getting the message. I'm safe. I am enough. I don't need to be on guard anymore. And the physiological shift from fight or flight to rest and digest changes everything. I could finally hear my body's signals. I could trust myself. My digestion improved. My sleep improved. My anxiety decreased. The obsessive thoughts quieted. And my body, which I'd been fighting for decades, became an ally, no longer an enemy.
Mindy, you have the most beautiful delivery of your story. It resonates deeply, like in the heart and in the soul, where you're like, I think everyone can hear a little bit of themselves in your story. I love listening to you always, and all of your wisdom. And your wisdom is in your latest book, Midlife Metamorphosis. This book is excellent. And I love what you called it, Midlife Metamorphosis, because I love that we're, here on Soul Shift, we're not looking at midlife as a midlife crisis or a midlife decline. but a metamorphosis, right? Which is transformation. And I would love for you to talk about why midlife is actually kind of the perfect time to be diving into this work.
I'm so passionate about this question because culture has sold us such a devastating lie about aging, right? We're told it's about decline. We're told it's about diminishment. We're told it's about the possibility of becoming invisible, especially for women. We're supposed to mourn our youth, fear our aging bodies, try desperately to hold on to what was. No, our best years are not behind us. They are always in front of us. Midlife is not a decline. It's maybe a distillation. By the time we reach midlife, we've lived, we have data. We know what actually matters and what's noise. We've made mistakes, big mistakes. At least I can speak for myself. We've loved, we've lost, we've succeeded, and we've failed. We've raised children or built careers or navigated relationships or all of the above. And through all that, we've gathered wisdom that our younger selves could not have, and in many cases could not have navigated, right? And we certainly have less patience. We have less patience for the bullshit. We have less patience for other people's nonsense as well as our own. And we can smell inauthenticity a mile away. We're done performing. We're done people-pleasing. We're done shrinking ourselves to fit into spaces that were never meant for our full expression. And we can finally become the heroes in our story. And we can finally become the woman who we were meant to be before the world told us who we needed to be. You know, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I was still trying to be who I thought I should be. I was auditioning for approval constantly and tricking myself, thinking that that's the way I was going to gain that approval. That's the way I was going to be accepted. That's the way I was going to be loved. That's the way I was going to be worthy. But by the time I hit my 50s, I was done. I was exhausted. And that exhaustion became the portal. It opened the door for where I am now. So yeah, I am who I want to be when I grow up. And midlife is when we have the most authority over our lives. We're not asking for permission anymore. We're not waiting to be chosen. We've chosen ourselves. And that can be revolutionary. For women especially, midlife often coincides with major transitions. Yes, kids leaving home, parents aging and passing, partners aging and passing, career shifting or ending. We can be caregivers. And then our bodies are changing, of course. And as you alluded to in the introduction, our bodies are changing in ways that we never would have given them permission to change, right? And those transitions can be very destabilizing. They can crack us open. But they're also invitations for the deepest form of transformation. And that's what I invite people into, to be open to looking at this phase of life, this season of life, as we so beautifully refer to it so often here on Soul Shift, as an invitation for the greatest transformation that they will ever experience, right? We're forced to ask, who am I now? What do I want? What legacy do I want to leave? What am I modeling for future generations? And of course, what do I want the next chapter of my life to look like, to feel like?
Mindy, what I love is that you've taken a season of life where a lot of women feel so defeated or stuck and just don't know where to turn. And you've just flipped it on its head. And it's just a beautiful door to walk through because there's so many possibilities. And this is where I think a lot of your work is so powerful because it helps women understand how, by loving themselves, they can do and create just about anything, right? Your formula is not step 1, step 2, step 3. It's soulful, it's full of love, and it's intentional. And I think that's what makes it so, in my mind, priceless for people to experience. And so, the woman that's listening right now who is exactly where you were, she's unfortunately been at war with her body for decades. She's exhausted. She's listening, and she might be on that edge of like giving up hope because she just can't see past what she's feeling. What would you want her to understand about herself today?
First thing I would want her to understand is that the shrinking was never her idea. It was handed to her by culture, family systems, but mostly, and this is what I feel viscerally, multi-billion-dollar industry that profits enormously from her self-doubt. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I titled it the way I did, because she did not fail diet culture. Diet culture failed her over and over and over again. And she kept trying anyway because she was told the problem was her willpower, her discipline. Maybe she didn't want it badly enough. When the truth is that the model itself is broken. The system is designed to keep us coming back, to keep us feeling like we're not enough, to keep us buying the next program, the next plan, the next promise. And I would want her to know that the decades she spent in that war, they were not wasted. Brought her here to this moment of questioning, of being willing to consider a different story. And that's not a small thing. It's actually the beginning of everything. And I would tell her, your body's not your enemy. Your body has been carrying you through every single day of your life, through grief, through joy, through childbirth or illness or heartbreak or celebration. And your body never once abandoned you. You abandoned it. And I say that with so much compassion because I did it too. We were taught to, but it's never too late to come back home.
Mindy, I love how vulnerable you are. I just want to say thank you for your courage to tell your story. As I've mentioned before, I do think it resonates with so many people. And it's a big deal to get out there and actually tell the story as you have told it and to share the vulnerabilities all intertwined in your story. So thank you for sharing this. And I am just grateful that you have turned decades of pain into a path of freedom for so many women. I feel so lucky. Chris and I both feel so lucky to be working alongside you and your wisdom.
Oh, well, I am the lucky one. And I am so grateful. I'm actually grateful for the pain and the loss and the lessons because they all got me here. None of it was a failure. None of it was a failing on my part. And I know in my heart and in my very deep soul that every decision I have made in this very storied life was the best I could do at the time. And I want to share that with every woman out there who is questioning her worth, who is questioning her daily existence. That when you lead with integrity and you believe in yourself, you can't make a mistake. Maybe things don't turn out the way you hope that they would, but that's not a mistake. And that's really the message that I want to convey. And when I talk about radical acceptance, here's what I know to be true. Radical acceptance does not mean giving up. It doesn't mean letting yourself go or settling for less or stopping your growth. It means finally coming home to yourself. It means stepping into the woman who has always been there waiting to be seen, the woman you were before the world told you who you needed to be. Radical acceptance allows you to come home and embrace the opportunity for true transformation, which happen when we let go of what's no longer serving us. Transformation is not so much about what we do to change. It's about what we let go of in an effort to become the change we want to see.
Mindy, this has just been such an incredible story and transformation and the epitome of the word soul shift. I mean, literally everything you shared, my heart is like really warm right now. And I want everyone to read the book, like everyone, because I know that they will resonate with it and it will help them. And what you're sharing is that you're going from sadness to this fulfilling life. you know? And I know you said you grew up in a beautiful home, but we all have our demons, and you were brave enough to share them today. And so everybody that's listening, so Mindy's book, we have The Freedom Promise, and then also Midlife Metamorphosis, the journey from diet culture to radical acceptance. They're both available now. And if this episode resonated with you and you are ready to begin your own journey through the 4R framework, you can learn about Mindy's coaching program at www.freedompromise.com.
And you can find me on Instagram at The Freedom Promise, and email me, Mindy at The Freedom Promise. I read every email. I manage my own social media, manage my own inbox. I read every email, and I will respond in kind. I came to this work, created The Freedom Promise, in an effort to embrace my own recovery, but more so to pay it forward. So I am grateful for this opportunity to share my story. So grateful to be alongside both of you every week. And yes, this is what Soul Shift is about. So I thank you.
We thank you, Mindy. Thank you for today. And I want to speak to our audience and remind you to remember that the worthiness you've been searching for, it was never on the other side of a smaller body. It was always here. It was just waiting for you. It's not too late, not even a little bit too late, to finally come home to yourself.
Mindy, I just want to thank you. You know, what you shared is your legacy, and it's heartwarming, and I know it's going to help future generations of women to just love themselves, love their bodies, and have a happier and more fulfilling life. And that I really, really thank you for. You can't duplicate what you do. And that's what I love about you. So everyone here, till next time, keep shifting your mind and your heart and your soul. Cheers. Thank you for sharing the sacred time today.
We hope something in this conversation touched your heart
And offered nourishment for your soul's journey.
Remember, transformation is most effortless when it happens one tender shift at a time.
Until next week, we invite you to carry one insight from today into your life.
Not as a task.
Think of it as a superpower to yourself.
If something resonated, we'd love to hear from you. If you're joining us on YouTube, feel free to leave us a comment below.
Your words ripple outward, offering connection and comfort to others walking this path beside you.
If Soul Shift feels like home, please subscribe and consider leaving us a review.
Your support will help us reach more hearts that need to hear they're not alone.
We're holding you in love, so know you're not alone. Your journey matters.
May your heart be filled.
And may your path be filled with grace.